Two, we're going to start to look at a market failure that exists when we start to examine the different types of goods that exist. Again, not all goods are going to have market failures associated with them. And so we're going to look at specific types of goods and how we can characterize these goods to determine whether or not a market failure may exist. All right, so the first thing that we can think about is all goods can be divided into four categories based on two different characteristics. The first characteristic is rivalry in consumption. And so when you're thinking about rivalry in consumption, I want you to actually think about the word rival, right? We're fighting over consumption. Next, excludability. Can we prevent people from consuming the product if they don't pay for it? Again, we're going to look at these more in depth, and we're going to talk about how these two characteristics can determine four different categories of goods. All right, so our first, rivalry is when one person purchases and consumes a product. It is no longer available for anyone else in the market to also purchase and consume. And you might think initially, well, aren't all goods rival? We're going to look at examples of rival goods and then goods that would be considered not rival. Okay, so the first example of a rival good would be an ice cream cone. When I purchase and consume an ice cream cone, that ice cream cone is no longer available for you to consume and purchase and consume. If I buy that exact ice cream cone, you cannot buy that exact ice cream cone and consume it. It's only one ice cream cone. It's rival. We have to fight over that one ice cream cone. And this is going to be the true of a lot of goods that we consume on a daily basis, right? I mentioned earlier pizza in a previous lecture. Pizza is going to be, there's no market failure. It's a rival good. If you buy the pizza, then I can't consume it. A car would be another example. If you purchase a car and you're consuming the car, it's not available for me to purchase. I can't purchase the same car. I can't consume the same car as you. And so we have rival goods. We're fighting over the same product. But not all goods are rival. An example of a non-rival good is that you can purchase cable television. I can purchase cable television. We can both consume the same TV show at the same time without hurting one another. It's non-rival. We can both purchase the same product, right? We both are purchasing cable television. We're both consuming it at the same time, the exact same product. It's non-rival in consumption. Good. And so other examples might be the air we breathe, or the sunlight. And so even though we're not buying it, but it's not necessarily rival, right? You can consume the sun, I can consume the sun at the same time, and we're not hurting each other's consumption of the sun. Okay, and so that's going to be another example of a non-rival good. The internet, right? You can purchase the internet, I can purchase some internet. We can both consume the internet, even a website at the same time, but we're not affecting each other's consumption. And so non-rival good. All right, on the other side, we have excludability. So excludability means that sellers can prevent people who don't pay for the product from consuming the product or getting the benefit of purchasing the product. So again, it's easy to think, well, everything's excludable, but not everything's excludable. So first off, an excludable good would be tickets to a basketball game at University of South Carolina. Definitely excludable. If you don't pay for tickets, you can't get in. It's excludable, definitely. And something like pizza, again, is going to be excludable. If you don't pay for a slice of pizza, you don't get a slice of pizza. A seller can prevent you from getting the product. However, not all goods are excludable. Something like a bike path or a sidewalk is going to be non-excludable. I might not pay in terms of taxes or donation or anything. I might have nothing to do with this sidewalk or bike path, but nobody can stop me from walking on it. And so it's going to be a non-excludable good. Nobody can prevent you from consuming that product. Okay. And earlier we had fireworks on an example. it's going to be another example of a non-excludable good. So even if there's an area that you have to pay to go into to sit there and watch those fireworks, I can stand right outside the gates and still consume the product. I didn't pay to get inside the gates, but you can't stop me from watching the fireworks. And so that's going to be an example of another non-excludable good. All right, so we have rival, non-rival, excludable, non-excludable. And from these four characteristics, or these four definitional types, we create different types of goods. Okay, so the first one that we're going to look at is rival and excludable. And a rival and excludable good is a private good, or some people might call it a typical good. And this is going to be a lot of the goods that we consume. And so we've already talked about pizza. Pizza's rival. If you buy that pizza, that's one less pizza in the world for me to buy. And so we both can't consume the same pizza. And so it's rival in consumption. It's also excludable. If you don't pay for the pizza, then nobody's going to let you eat the pizza. And so it's a very private good. Clothing, food, flowers, etc., going on. And you can probably think of a lot of examples that are excludable. Then we come to goods that are excludable. So somebody can prevent you from purchasing if you don't purchase the product, you can't consume it, but it's not rival. We can both consume it at the same time. And this is where cable TV comes in. So non-rival, you and I can both sit in our houses, watch the exact same TV show on different TVs at the same time. But if you don't pay for it, you don't get the benefit. Some sort of private park or country club would be another example. It's non-rival. We can all, let's say, golf at the country club at the same time. But if you don't pay for the service, you don't get it. A movie theater is another example. Non-rival. We can both sit in the movie theater, consume the same movie at the same time. But if you don't pay, you don't get to go in. All right, let's go up to our other top corner here and think about rival. So it's rival in consumption. If you buy it, then I can't buy the same one. Or if you consume a good, then I can't consume the same one. But nobody can stop you from consuming it. And the most common discussion in terms of common goods would be something like fish in the ocean. We can both go out and fish in the ocean. Nobody can stop you from fishing in the ocean. But if you catch a fish, that's one less fish in the ocean for me. We both can't catch the same fish, consume the same fish at the same time. So nobody can stop you from consuming or stop you from fishing. But it is rival in consumption. And so those are going to be called common goods. So other fisheries, forests, mines, things like that are going to be examples of those common goods. Then we have goods that are non-excludable and non-rival, and this is where our big market failures exist. Goods that nobody can stop you from consuming them, and we can all consume them at the same time. These are public goods, and this is where something like sunshine comes in, right? We don't have to actually pay for some sunshine, so we don't necessarily have to look at it, but it's non-excludable. Nobody can stop you from consuming sunshine. And it's non-rival. We can all consume the sunshine at the same time. And so we have a public good. Again, another example is national defense. And this is a great example of a public good. It's non-excludable. So the government can't, if you don't pay your taxes one year, they can't just put a bubble over the rest of the United States and leave you out of the bubble and say, well, you didn't pay, so I'm not going to protect you. Right? There's no way to stop people who don't pay from consuming the good. And it's also non-rival. Right now, you're consuming national defense. I'm consuming national defense. The entire everybody within the United States is consuming national defense. And we're not stopping, we're not consuming more, we're not preventing people, we're not fighting over national defense because we all have access to it because we can consume it together. And so that's why national defense is a great example of a public good. All right, so private goods are going to be places where we don't typically see those market failures. We're going to talk about externalities in the next lecture, where we might see an externality. But in terms of the types of goods, private goods are not going to have that problem of market failures. Where we do see the biggest market failures are occurring in our public goods. Our public goods have market failures associated with them. And so what brings about the problems within the market failure within the public good? The free rider problem. So every consumer of this product has an incentive to understate the actual value they have in order to pay less but still get all of the benefits. So I might say, well, national defense is actually worth nothing to me. I don't care if I have national defense. Why don't you guys all just pay for national defense? If you want to leave me out, that's okay. Well, it's impossible to leave me out. And so we have a problem there. It's a free rider problem. Another example of a free rider problem, and most of you are going to relate to this, is going to be a group project. So there's a group project, 4 people, each person has to take a role. Everybody wants to get an A. Well, that 4th person knows that everybody wants to get an A, so they don't do any of the work. They just free ride off of you, and they know even if they don't do anything, you'll still at least get a B. And so they just free ride off you. They have the incentive to say, well, it's actually worth an F to me. I don't care if I fail this. And they don't do any of the work. Whereas everybody else does all the work and they get the A even though they didn't do any of the work. And then so they understate their actual value of a good in order to put less effort into the actual final product. Okay, so group projects, cheating on taxes is another one, right? We all want the benefits that taxes give us. They allow us to drive on the road. They give us national defense and education and all of those great things that the government can provide. But we cheat on our taxes. We try to find ways to reduce our taxes, and sometimes they're not legal ways. And so we cheat on our taxes even though we want all of the benefits that the tax revenue gives us. And then other examples would be research and development. So one firm might not put any money towards research and development, and just anytime another firm gets that research development, they just take advantage of it. All right, so public goods have inefficient market outcomes. We're not reaching that socially optimal quantity that's being produced. We actually are under allocating resources to the production of this good. We're not producing enough of it on our own. There may be actually the case where one private seller, and not even one private seller, will enter into the market to supply the product. And so governments can move into the market to move it towards equilibrium. And in the case of a public good, it's most likely going to be the case that they're going to actually provide the public good. With the public good, it is very difficult to just subsidize it, and that's going to be the other way that they could. With many public goods, it's going to be hard to subsidize the product. They're actually going to move into the market and completely provide the public good, because there's a failure, both that non-excludable and non-rival aspect to it. The other option is if there are some problems with the good, but there are some sellers in the market, they may actually subsidize the good. So a tax is one way to improve the market outcome, but not for a public good. A public good is providing the public good, or on some instances, subsidizing the good. Okay, so let's do a quick quiz to determine which type of good each of the following would be. Collecting seashells on the beach, fireworks, which we've already talked a little bit about, a gallon of milk, and ski slope. All right, so which of the following, and I'm going to bring us back to that that chart so we can look at it, but collecting seashells on the beach, fireworks, a gallon of milk, and the ski slope. So I want you to pause after I return, and then we'll go through each of those 4 examples. All right, so our first one, hopefully you've paused and gone through, but for our first one, collecting seashells at the beach, that's going to be non-excludable. Nobody can stop me from consuming or from looking for those seashells, consuming those seashells, but it will be rival, right? If I pick up a seashell, that's one less seashell for you. And so it is rival. And so we would consider those seashells to be common goods. Our next example was the fireworks. And we've already talked about fireworks in terms of the public goods. Fireworks are public goods. They're non-excludable. Nobody can stop you from consuming. You can stand right outside those gates and see what everybody who paid for can also see. And they're non-rival. Both of us can consume fireworks at the exact same. We had the ski slope. The ski slope would be considered a club good. It's excludable. If you don't pay to use the ski slope, you don't get to use it. And on most days, it's going to be non-rival. If for some reason the ski slope was very busy and we both couldn't go down at the same time, it would become rival. But on most cases, we're going to consider a ski slope to be non-rival. All right, so hopefully you both answered each of those questions correctly. And if you have any more questions or you'd like more practice, make sure you go through those more practice folder items and see me during virtual office hours.